Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Hong Kong's lowest paid workers look set to have a wage increase, but by only $2.50 an hour, according to sources. Labourers protest over loss of wages after a contractor was ordered to stop operating its cranes. And another COVID curve goes as live performances return to pubs next week. The minimum wage is expected to rise to $40 an hour next year, but labor groups criticize the proposed increase as a mere pittance, while employers said it's acceptable. Macy Mock reports.
The Minimum Wage Commission has agreed that hourly rates should be raised by $2.50 to $40 in May next year, according to sources. Since it was introduced in 2011, when it was set at $28 an hour, the minimum wage has been reviewed every 2 years, but has been frozen at the current rate of $37.50 since 2019. If the Executive Council gives its approval, more workers such as cleaners and security guards will be taking home just a wee bit more in around 7 months from now. The wages of a security guard working 8 hours a day will rise from $300 a day to $320. The $20 increase will hardly pay for a fast food meal.
Even now, if they increase to $40, actually still cannot provide the basic living for the people. Now it's 37.5. Actually, the real purchasing power is only 27. After deduct inflation, the committee should review the whole system and then increase more of the wage.
Labor sector lawmaker Chow Siu-chung agrees, saying the minimum wage should increase to $46. He said salaries should be able to support a 2-person household. An employer representative on the Labor Advisory Board, the LAB, said the proposed raise would not put much pressure on bosses.
It's a situation now with every employers are getting ready. They would like to recruit more staff or workers and getting standby and hoping for the business coming.
In the security markets, the increase about the 6.7% is accepted by our clients and also our security members.
Ho said a raise of $2.50 an hour is affordable, and clients in the commercial and housing sectors would not cut manpower to save costs. Between May and June last year, there were 14,300 people earning a minimum wage of $37.50, accounting for just 0.5% of the city's workforce. Macy Mock, HKIBC.
There have been protests at several construction sites as disgruntled workers complained of lost wages. They were forced to stop working when their contractor was ordered to suspend crane operations following a fatal accident last month. Joanna Ho reports.
Workers protested in at least 5 construction sites today, including one near Tai Po Hospital, after crane operations by a contractor were suspended. At a site in Pak Tin Estate, workers chanted slogans and held up banners this morning to underline their plight. This woman is among many who lost their income when they were forced to stop working for more than a month after the government ordered the aggressive construction company to suspend crane operations at all sites where it is involved in projects. Last month, one of the company's cranes collapsed at a construction site on Anderson Road, killing 3 people and injuring 6. Company officials who tried to mediate in the dispute at the Pak Tin Estate site said they hope to give a reply by Tuesday. At a site in Yau Ma Tei, a man who claimed to represent a subcontractor said the Labor Department hasn't replied to a request for a timetable to resume crane operations.
勞工處已經 check 咗我哋啲稱係符合要求嘅，但係都要停。
He said it was unfair that many cranes which met the machinery requirements were forced to stay out of service after the deadly accident. He said about 230 workers from his company were affected and urged the department to reply within a week. When Aggressive's parent company Great Harvest Group was approached, it told those requesting a response to ask the Labor Department. The department, however, did not reply. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
The long wait is over for musicians and performers. After 2.5 years, they have been given the green light to stage live shows in bars from next Thursday. Here's Joanna Ho again.
Starting next Thursday, patrons can watch live performances while eating and drinking in bars and nightclubs. This comes after the health authorities further relaxed COVID curbs for certain premises, such as restaurants, bars, and other entertainment venues. Performers will be required to undergo PCR tests twice a week and self-test every time before entering venues, while customers must keep their masks on when dancing. Hong Kong Bar and Club Association Chairman Chin Chun Wing welcomed the arrangement, which he believes will increase business by 20 to 30%. Visitors to theme parks will be allowed to eat and drink in outdoor areas. The government is also actively considering raising the cap on public gatherings to 12 people from 4. Overall infections in the past week rose by about 30% from the previous 7 days, but Under-Secretary for Health Libby Lee hopes society can return to normality in an orderly and gradual manner.
We have not seen a substantial increase in the number of cases, and also the HA is still able to cope with its current situation. So, given the situation, we are also attempting to find some room so that we can cautiously relax some of the restrictions. At the same time, we would also have to continue to observe the developments to see if there is further room for relaxation.
Infections recorded today rose to 5,622, of which 387 were imported. 29 cases of the new subvariant XBB.1 have been identified so far. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
A former engineer who stabbed a policeman during a protest in 2020 has been sentenced to 5 years in jail for rioting and wounding. One of his co-defendants received a 33-month term for his role in a Causeway Bay protest, which occurred one day after the national security law took effect. Janice Lowe reports.
On July 1, 2020, about 300 protesters set up roadblocks in Causeway Bay and chanted slogans on the anniversary of the handover. During the unrest, police tried to subdue student Law Kok Sum, who was 18 at the time. A university undergraduate, Percy Chow, who's now 21, tried to drag Law away. During the skirmish, former civil engineer Wong Kun-wah stabbed a policeman with a military knife. The 26-year-old tried to flee to London that night, but was arrested moments before his flight following a tip-off. Last month, Wong, Chow, and Law pleaded guilty to rioting and other charges. The trio were sentenced in the district court this morning. Judge Frankie Yu said Wong's offenses were extremely serious as the officer's injury was life-threatening. The officer suffered a muscle tear in his left shoulder, and the wound was only 4 millimeters away from the artery and nerves. Wong was sentenced to 5 years in jail for rioting and wounding. Chow was given a 33-month jail term for rioting and obstructing an officer. Law, who pleaded guilty to rioting and resisting an officer, will be sentenced at the end of the month after the court obtains an assessment report. A fourth defendant, Wong's girlfriend, Cheung Tzi-cheng, had pleaded not guilty to perverting the course of justice. She will be sentenced next month. Janice Low, HKIBC.
Turning overseas, the United Nations General Assembly has voted overwhelmingly to condemn Moscow for making 4 Ukrainian regions part of Russia. There were 143 votes in favor and 5 against. 35 members abstained, including the world's most populous countries, China and India. The resolution was non-binding, but was the biggest vote against Russia since it invaded Ukraine. Moscow insists that people in the 4 regions chose to join Russia, but the West claims referendums held last month were a sham. There's a twist in the row between the United States and Saudi Arabia over Riyadh's decision to slash oil production. It appears Washington wanted the Saudis to delay announcing the cuts until after the U.S. midterm elections. The revelation came as U.S. Democrats demanded that Riyadh be punished for teaming up with Russia to slash oil production.
The Saudis need to come to their senses. They have committed a humongous blunder, very much against their own economic and security interests, as well as ours. The only apparent purpose of this cut in oil supplies is to help the Russians and harm Americans. It was unprovoked and unforced.
Democrats are worried that lower oil output would raise petrol prices. That could hurt their chances in next month's elections. Blumenthal wants to penalize the Saudis by freezing arms sales. Such a move would, in fact, be welcomed by Yemen, which for years has been at the receiving end of Western weapons sold to Saudi Arabia. Hong Kong's stock market slipped for the 6th consecutive session ahead of the latest U.S. inflation data, which will determine the pace of interest rate increases. The Hang Seng Index lost 1.9%, dropping to another 11-year low. Mainland property stocks dragged down the index, with Country Garden retreating nearly 10% and Country Garden Services giving up 14.1%. Sands China dropped 7.5% as casino stocks fell. Beijing-based biotechnology company BeiGene jumped 14.5% after announcing that its leukemia treatment drug fared better in tests than a similar product by a U.S. firm. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index lost 311 points today. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent retreated by $7.40. Meituan down $4.40, while Alibaba was down $1.60. AIA Insurance was down by $1.90, but Wuxi Biologics was up by 10 cents. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro's at 7.64, pound sterling at 8.83, while the Australian dollar at 4.93. Over in Europe, the London FTSE is currently up by 25 points. Shares of Hong Kong-listed Rusal plunged nearly 4% today on reports that the United States may ban aluminium imports from Russia. The reports sent the price of aluminium shooting up on the London Metal Exchange, jumping 5% to $2,370 a ton. If a ban is confirmed, it will be the latest U.S. penalty against Russia for invading Ukraine and may push aluminium prices even higher. Rusal, which is headquartered in Moscow, is the world's largest aluminium producer outside China, accounting for 6% of total supply. On to the weather now. The relatively cool days may be over, as the mercury will peak at 31 degrees tomorrow. It will stay fine and dry as we head into the weekend. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Good evening.